I have in my hands all the notes of the things that I gleaned from the first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I have to say, start out by saying, I cried every time. Every single book. When the part comes where they said, "What are you doing here? He is risen." I cried like a baby. Okay, so the things that I noticed, completely unplugged, people. This is truth time. The first thing that I noticed is that the swine story. This is the story where Jesus arrives to a town, and there are two men or one man who are possessed by a demon. So he comes and he says, basically to the demon that's possessing the man, you can go, at their request, into some pigs, a herd of pigs, and the pigs all go nuts and they fall into a lake and they drown and they die. Okay? Each story is different. I mean, one of the biggest differences is that in one story there's one man, and in another story there are two. So the stories vary, and a lot of people would probably grab onto that just to be able to say, no, that means there's contradiction. That means the Bible's not true. That means lies. But after analyzing it, praying about it, it actually makes me believe the Bible stories more. Have you ever played a game of telephone? That's kind of where I'm coming from. If you've ever played a game of telephone, you know that the story changes just a little bit the farther down the line it gets. So if they were getting their story secondhand or third hand, or even from different witnesses that were actually there, I can see how the stories would vary. I can see, for example, going from two people to one, somebody who was there saw two men, and the man himself, I'm almost convinced that Luke interviewed the guy himself, because Luke was like meticulous. I believe he interviewed Jesus's mother, Mary, because he has the lyrics to her song. And he knows the story, a very private story about when she privately went to visit Elizabeth. So Luke was meticulous. I think he interviewed that guy. And so when he told the story, he only told that guy's story. That's just how I'm taking it. You can take it or leave it. All right. So the next thing is I'm trying to figure out where people are getting the idea for the rapture. I read 3 Gospels and I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. Why people think, and maybe the New Testament has different revelations. The Bible does say that Jesus says the Holy Spirit will teach us. So maybe the Holy Spirit told one of the apostles. I don't know. Some reference the 2 in the field and the 1 will be taken idea. I gotta say, it's a little flawed. Not a good thing to be taken. They actually ask him, where will they be taken? And he goes, where the eagles circle around dead bodies. Okay, this is also why it's so helpful to read the prophets first, because it brought to mind Zacharias. That's Spanish. Zachariah? It brought to mind Zechariah. There's a verse in there. Zechariah 14. I live in Mexico, if you didn't know. That's why I'm reverting to Spanish. Zechariah 14 describes this total Indiana Jones, like face melting off sort of scene, where basically it says that when his judgment comes, the people who are rebellious will dissolve into thin air. It says here that this is the Matthew version. Again, everyone is a little different. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. So they didn't know the flood was coming, and it came, and it took them all away. Next verse. It says, 2 men will be in the field, and another will be taken, and the other left. If you're taken by the flood, you die. If you're taken from the field, I assume, considering the context, that means you die also. Just my observation. I'm not a theologian. I'm just reading the Bible. Next is Christ brings division. He brings a sword. He even says in Luke, "Jeez, I wish I could just bring the fire down on them now. I wish the fire were kindled already." So you hear kind of that wrath of Old Testament wrath coming out. But he says, not yet. And then, of course, you see how much he loves Israel, how much he loves his people. Because in the same book, he says, I just wish I could take you under my wing like a mother hen and just shield you from all of this and make it stop. But you were not willing. You were not willing. And it even says, even if a dead man were to come out of his grave, there's a whole entire parable. This might go too long too, you guys. There's a whole entire parable in there about Lazarus. He's a beggar, and he's in the streets, and there's a rich guy too. So they both die. The rich guy goes to hell, and Lazarus, the poor guy, goes to heaven. And he's like laying on the bosom of Abraham, it says. And then the rich guy who's in hell turns and he looks at Abraham, and he's like, can you send Lazarus over here to me? Just have him dip his finger in some water so he can refresh my tongue. And Abraham says, you can't come here and I can't go there. And the rich guy's like, okay, fine, but I have 5 brothers. Go tell them what's coming, because I don't want them to suffer the same fate. And Abraham says, they have Moses, they have Old Testament. They have Moses. They have the prophets. If they don't believe now, they never will. And he's like, yes, but if you send Lazarus, if a dead guy comes out of his grave, they'll totally believe. And Abraham says, no. If they don't believe Moses, they won't believe, even if a dead man comes out of his grave to tell them. Jesus predicts the temple destruction. In all 3 Gospels, it doesn't even vary. That one is one that does not vary. He says it word for word exactly, like one stone will not be found on top of another. Or something. I'm paraphrasing. There will be no more Nehemiah temple. If you don't know what I mean by Nehemiah temple, you're going to have to go back and watch my other videos. By the way, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you will get all the videos that I am making. This is not going to end anytime soon. In my last video, I was like, okay, so they didn't have a prophet from Malachi all the way to John the Baptist. You'd think they'd pay attention. You'd think that as a scribe or a Pharisee, people who make their entire living off of knowing the Old Testament would figure it out. But no, the scribes and the Pharisees actually fulfilled a bunch of the prophecies themselves. Number 1, they bought a potter's field with Judas's blood money. Exactly as Jeremiah says, a potter's field with 30 pieces of silver. Okay? They crucified him, of course. Isaiah, they scourged him. They cast lots for his clothes. Psalms, I think. But Jesus did say, to them it has not been given to understand the mysteries of the kingdom. So, there it is, I guess. You guys, that is my video for this week. I don't even know how often I'm doing them anymore. I'm losing track of time, and I hope that you guys are at least enjoying what I'm doing and have learned something